Get all the news and controversy of the NFL right here on the Blitz Zone with your hosts, Eric Rosen and Jamie Hickson, as they discuss the hot topics concerning your favorite players and team, the winners, the losers, the big plays, and the big hits from around the league. Right here, only on the Blitz Zone.
It's Friday, October 9th. It's that time of the hour for your favorite NFL and college football show. Welcome to yet another week of the Blitz Zone. We're coming to you live from the studios of CTV in Staten Island, New York. I'm your host, Eric Rosen, and here with me is my main man co-partner throughout this whole adventure, Mr. Jamie the Sportsman Hickson.
Eric, it's wonderful working with you, as always. Hopefully we'll have ourselves a wonderful football weekend.
Hopefully we won't have to hear about another firing and all that this past week.
Yeah, this has been not too good a time to be a Dolphins fan.
Or this could be a good week for other teams because they're going to get some of their key players back.
Yeah, hopefully it'll be a good weekend for a couple of guys because it's painfully obvious that some of these teams are really missing their big guns, although there are a couple of teams who have been able to break even, so to speak.
I know, like this week, we know that Antonio Gates will be back for San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Big tight end for them. Martavis Bryant, the wide receiver for Pittsburgh, returns this week.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll talk about later some other players.
Yep.
But first, let's get into the news of the week, starting with the NFL's annual Fall League meeting. This is where the commissioner, Roger Goodell, meets with the other 32 owners.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, though, Green Bay doesn't have a clear-cut owner. It's usually the people of Green Bay, but they have somebody who speaks on their behalf.
Yeah, the Packers are the single most unique franchise in professional sports because they're a publicly owned franchise. They're owned by the stockholders.
So you and we could actually buy a stake in that team.
That's right. All we need is maybe, a couple $1,000?
Hey, if you want to go Dutch, I'll go Dutch with you.
There you go.
All right. Now, as you know, in all these meetings, a lot of topics get discussed.
Mm-hmm.
Among the many items that were up for discussion was the international games. The fact is they still want to try and get a team overseas. I think bad idea. But now the NFL signed a deal to keep the international games going through the year 2025. Yay. And expanding it possibly to other cities. But honestly, these are places that just love soccer, not Americanized football.
Yeah, I still don't get what this fascination is with trying to globalize a predominantly American game, especially when you consider that a lot of the Europeans, specifically the Brits, mock our version of American football, not even calling it real football. But at the same time, they don't realize the physicality of the sport. Yet somehow they've managed to sell out all 100,000 plus seats for each of the games that have taken place at Wembley.
I know.
Go figure.
Well, there are fans that are willing to pay the traveling fees and the hotel fees and the passport and all the other fees, to get there. But the average fan, though, it's too much for us. It's way too much of a cost for us to get a plane ticket to go to England.
Yeah.
I mentioned the passport, the hotel, incidentals.
Mm-hmm.
That all adds up.
Yeah.
I think it's not, and you're taking away a home game from that fan, from the entire fan base. That's just disrespectful, I believe. They tried this experiment. It was called NFL Europe. It expanded in 2006. Now, the other items that were discussed were, the city of Angels, Los Angeles. As we know tonight, because I'm wearing my Mets uniform, is the site of Game 1 of the NLDS.
Mm-hmm.
But going towards the future, they want to bring back an NFL franchise to L.A.
Yeah. I joked before that the NFL already has, or LA already has, two football teams there. They're called USC and UCLA, but that's a story for another day. When you think about it, LA has notoriously had some of the most blasé sports fans around. They arrive habitually late for Dodger games, then they leave habitually early for Dodger games. And the same goes true for the Lakers and the Kings and the other franchises that are there. of course,
Yeah.
they're able to draw 90,000 fans for both USC and UCLA, which is not bad. I mean, LA is actually a pretty good college town.
Or they draw a big crowd even in Northern Cali for Stanford, but you know that's Northern California.
Yeah, that's a good 6 hours north of LA. But at the same time, can LA really support 3 teams at the same time? I mean, think about it. When the Raiders and the Rams shared LA for 2 decades, the Raiders wound up calling the Coliseum home, while the Rams basically had to call Anaheim Stadium, which is about 45 minutes up the freeway home. And that was, I think, where the Rams wound up losing a lot of their fan base, because they actually drew reasonably well at the Coliseum. But once they made their way to Anaheim, all bets were off. Can they support 3 teams, specifically the Rams, Raiders, and the Chargers? And the Charger move to LA is really gaining a lot of steam, which is a real shame because San Diego's got some really proud fans there, and they've never had the joy of sharing a championship. They've had a Super Bowl team, and they've had 2 World Series teams, but they could just not win the big prize. As far as whether they can support 3 teams or not, I would much rather see them have 2. Maybe if the Rams were to... Right now, the Raiders are the more marketable franchise simply because of their history.
But the Chargers, I think, could be marketable, too, in L.A. I really believe they can attract a very good crowd in L.A.
They do have a history in L.A. because the Chargers started out in Los Angeles when they first played in the old AFL. Now, as far as the Rams are concerned, the Rams are probably a lame duck franchise, if you ask me, because they're going year to year on their lease in St. Louis. And what would happen if they were to be accepted as one of the teams over there? How would the fan base react to the return of the Rams? Because the Rams had an almost 50-year tradition over there.
It's a bit of a murky situation with all 3 of these teams. 2 of these teams, I believe it was the Rams and the Raiders are looking to share a stadium together in Inglewood, which they're looking to build on the old Derby track. And then there's talks about a stadium being built downtown at LA Live, right beside the Staples Center.
Yep.
And then there's even talks in Industrial City to build a stadium there, a 75,000 seat stadium.
And I've also heard the possibility of Carson, California being a site. And Carson, California is where they have the Home Depot Center for soccer.
So, LA will have a soccer team. Not really immediately. It will. That's going to happen, I believe. It's just a matter of time.
Well, LA already has the Galaxy, and unfortunately, Chivas USA wound up going belly up. But at the same time, I have heard rumors that the man that runs the Raiders now, Al Davis's kid, Mark Davis, he might be willing to sell the franchise and take on a partner to make this move possible.
And wouldn't it be shocking if he, went with somebody in the entertainment business? You know what?
Yeah.
Somebody in Hollywood. What about Spielberg? Why not?
Possibly.
That'd be crazy,
Here's another idea. And this would probably be really stretching it, but what about the idea of Magic Johnson maybe taking an interest in running either the Raiders or the Rams? He's already the majority owner of the Dodgers.
Exactly, with the Guggenheim partnership. And believe me, they spent a lot of money on that bid to get the Dodgers. So it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for him to put his hands in another cookie jar, if you will. Because he's got his hands in a lot of pots. He's one of the smartest businessmen around for ex-professional athletes.
Yep.
He really knew what to do with his money. And, with the Magic Johnson Theaters, with the fact that he's got the Dodgers now, I wouldn't be shocked one day that he gets a piece of the Lakers.
Yeah. That would really, really be something if Laker fans could see the greatest point guard in modern-day history actually run the franchise, at least have a 50% majority ownership.
Well, you know what? Despite that, and other things that were, that vote actually, they're going to have a vote about it in January, the owners, to discuss about the LA matter. Among the other items were the fact that Tom Brady's decision, the fact that Goodell didn't go through with it because he was in favor of a third-party arbitration system, didn't want to go through that mess, so he decided just not to go to not contest what the court ultimately ruled on in that decision. And then he's happy about the extra point rule that now it's placed at the 33-yard line. It's increasing the amount of 2-point conversions. They're discussing also reducing the preseason game from 4 games maybe to 3 or 2, which I'm not totally against that. And then the incident that took place in Seattle, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what their attitude is about the regular season, because there's been a lot of talk about an 18-game season. I know for a fact the players will never agree to an 18-game schedule.
No, not at all. The NFLPA, the Player Association, will be dead set against it in an 18-game season. And you would have to increase the roster if you did that from 53 to, say, 70 players.
Yep.
Because you would have to count for the amount of injuries we had this year. If you had another 2 weeks, you'd definitely need more players.
Would they have to do collective bargaining over this, though?
Oh, without a doubt. Because both sides, in order for any new changes, you have to have both the Players Association and the ownership in agreement. Now, there's an incident that took place earlier this week. There was a guy at DraftKings, if that's familiar to you, that along with FanDuel, these are both one-week fantasy websites where you can pick your players for whatever sport and collect your cash, say, on Tuesday if you're doing NFL. Mm-hmm. This employee named Ethan Haskell published data revealing what players were included on most rosters. Basically had a leg up. And then on September 28th, he finished second in a multi-million-dollar pool. But here's the kicker. He didn't do it on his own website. He did it on the competitors, FanDuel.
Oh, wow.
And he pocketed, guess this, $350,000 for his troubles.
That is just straight up gangster.
Yeah, but gangster to the point where it caught the ire of many of the news media, even our own Attorney General in New York, Eric Schneiderman. He's launching an investigation into both these websites. He wants the advantages daily fantasy company employees might have gained by using the data of their company to win prizes and contests offered by a competitor. He also is asking for to provide names and titles of the employees who compile player data. He wants the set roster values, deal with ownership percentages for pending and historical contests and aggregate success of players that play on their sites. And he wants data covering last year. He wants all this by this Tuesday. And he's he's written letters to 2 of the owners, of course, the 2 CEOs of these fan sites. You know, FanDuel CEO Nigel Eckles and DraftKings CEO Jason Robins. And you know, DraftKings, I believe, is based right here, is based in Boston, while FanDuel is based in New York.
Yeah.
And this really, some people are saying this is tantamount to insider trading.
Yeah.
Even though there was an investigation done by DraftKings saying that he didn't have this information until about 40 minutes after, but who knows how authentic that is. And who controls all the information, too? This is really a situation that's it's not going to die right now.
This is only going to create more bad blood between those 2 sites.
And bad publicity, which these sites can ill afford to have, because these sites are posting upwards of $2 to $3 billion in prizes that they give out. It's the last thing they need. My brother does DraftKings.
Has he won anything?
I think he's won some money. It really
That's good.
He's won some money, but it really depends on the players that you pick and what type of money leagues are you involved in, because every different league is worth different amounts of money, and every single news pregame show in the NFL and ESPN and CBS are sponsored by these 2 sites. They have a stake in making sure that it's clean. Now the state of the Miami Dolphins. We find out after the 27-14 defeat in London against the Jets, which we'll get into a little bit. On Monday, Stephen Ross decides to let Joe Philbin go.
Yeah.
Then he decides to name Dan Campbell, the Titans coach, the interim coach. Then Campbell decides to shuffle how things are done in practice because of Tannehill's incident with the practice squad saying, enjoy your practice squad paycheck. Enjoy your practice squad trophy. The last guy that should be making any criticisms whatsoever.
Yeah.
And then several coaches were shuffled around. And yesterday, Staten Island's own Kevin Coyle got fired. Now I ask you, is the Dolphins, are they in trouble, or is there a renaissance?
I think that goes without saying, Eric. This Dolphin franchise has been in trouble for the last 3 or 4 years already. They still can't get their quarterback situation right. And do we even have to mention the Mike Wallace disaster, where they paid him an awful lot of money to be that number one guy for Ryan Tannehill? And look how that turned out.
He's in Minnesota right now.
Yep, and he's doing reasonably well playing for the Vikings right now. And then they basically bankrolled their entire season on the hope that Ndamukong Suh was going to be the stalwart defensive lineman for them, just like he was with the Lions. And what's he done this so far in the first quarter of the year? Next to nothing.
Yeah, just no sacks and maybe a few tackles at best. And the entire defensive line has just been terrible. The Week 2 game against Jacksonville, where Olivier Vernon got that unnecessary roughness 15-yard penalty that gave Brett Myers the game-winning field goal, 23-20, that didn't help there. The fact they got their butts handed them at home Week 3, 41-14 against
48-14. I think it was 48-21, which is the final score.
No, 41-21 against the Buffalo Bills, one of the worst defeats they've ever had in a home opener.
Yeah.
And now this loss, that broke the camel. That was a straw that broke the camel's back. Let's hope that there is a rebirth waiting for them, because I think there is. I think Dan Campbell is the right person for the job. I think he's going to be a good coach.
If the name Dan Campbell sounds familiar, it probably should. Dan Campbell used to be a tight end in the NFL. He was a tight end for the Giants and the Cowboys.
Right there. Exactly. And this organization believes in him. He believes in the players. He's going to change the culture around. And let's not forget, Philbin was 24-28. No playoff appearances whatsoever. Had the 2013 Richie Incognito, Jonathan Martin bullying scandal.
Yeah, that's something else that I failed to mention.
And the fact that the players had zero, if any, respect for him whatsoever. So right there, I think Stephen Ross actually made the first right decision in his tenure.
And that's really saying something, considering that Ross has been the guy running the Dolphins for quite a few years now.
After Wayne Huizenga decided to just up and leave, keep his billions. Now get into the Cowboys in a bit later on. Let's go into Week 4 action, starting with Monday night. The Detroit Lions visiting the Seattle Seahawks in a game which the Detroit Lions are looking for their first victory in the year. Seattle, of course, coming off their first win over the Chicago Bears, blanking them 26-0, hoping to capitalize on that with Chancellor. And at the very end, the game is 13-10 Seahawks. Chancellor knocks the ball out of Calvin Johnson's hand at the 1-yard line, but then KJ Wright knocks the ball, kicks the ball out of bounds, and doesn't get called at all for illegally touching the ball into the end zone. It's called a touchback. It should have been ruled Detroit's ball at the 1-yard line.
I don't know how they could say that's not a reviewable play.
Yep, that was a clear turnover right there. All turnovers are supposed to be reviewed. So this was crap right there on a cracker, if you ask me. And because of that, Seattle got the ball back. They threw a 50-yard pass to from Wilson to Jermaine Kearse, able to kill the clock, 13-10 in the game. It was unbelievable that Calvin Johnson was a part of this 91-yard drive with Matthew Stafford and didn't produce anything. Okay, let's go to the Ravens-Steelers last Thursday. As you know, the Ravens got their first win in the season, avoided what would have been their first 0-4 start, winning 23-20 on the game-winning field goal from 52 yards by Justin Tucker. Great kicker right there.
Yep.
Okay, Cleveland Browns visiting the San Diego Chargers. The Chargers, of course, at home, always has been good this year at home, while the Browns coming off a terrible loss in Week 3. And the hits just keep continuing, unfortunately. Rookie Josh Lambo kicks the game-winning 34-yard field goal as time expires. And this was after because of Tramon Williams going offside, giving this kid the easy field goal. Sailed White,
This just goes to show you some teams are just snake bitten with bad luck.
Bad penalties.
And bad penalties.
Well, 30-27 being the result right there. Because you know what? McCown had not that bad of a game. In fact, Travis Benjamin was good. Green Bay Packers visiting the 49ers in San Francisco. And the Packers, of course, Rodgers coming off that 5-touchdown performance against Kansas City, didn't have as many touchdowns this week. They did, however, win 17-3. 17-3. That's how many points? 3 points for Kaepernick, yet got sacked 6 times in this game and had another pick. 5 in the last 2 weeks. Terrible right there. The Rams visiting their division rival Cardinals, and Todd Gurley, 146 yards on the ground in the second half in his debut, leads the Rams to a 24-22 victory against then undefeated Cardinals.
Look out for the St. Louis Rams. They're probably the most intriguing team to watch this year. A lame duck franchise. We don't know where they're going to call home next year. And somehow they're able to block out all of those distractions and remain as pesky the first quarter of this season as they were all of last year.
It's amazing. Great, turnaround for them.
Now, do you see what the difference is when you have a competent quarterback?
Oh, well, this week, Foles actually had 3 touchdowns, and Tavon Austin had a great performance. Gurley coming back from that ACL tear he had from Georgia. That's why they selected 10th overall in this past draft, because for the situations like this. The Vikings visiting the Broncos in the mountain, of course, and ended up losing 23-20. Brandon McManus, game-winning 39-yard field goal with about a minute 51 left, but the defense came up with yet another fourth-quarter turnover.
There you
in
go.
Every single game, T.J. Ward, the strip sack of Teddy Bridgewater in the closing seconds. Game over, 23-20, unbelievable. And the 7 sacks they amassed in this game. Ouch.
Yep. Not only are they good, they're opportunistic as well.
Yeah, especially DeMarcus Ware.
Yep.
4.5 leading the league this year. The Cowboys visit the Saints in the Big Easy.
Wow.
The Saints looking for their first victory in the year, and they got it in overtime. On the second play, Drew Brees throws an 80-yard game-winning pass to C.J. Spiller, but not only was this the game-winning pass, it was his 400th of his career, becoming yet the 5th quarterback to do so.
First off, the Saints were completely lucky winning this game because they missed a game-winning field goal at the very end, and then they wound up winning the coin toss, which allowed for Brees to get that 400th career touchdown. On the flip side, though, this just goes to show you what happens when you don't have your top quarterback and top receiver in the game. I mean, Brandon Weeden, this time he was actually okay at best.
Okay. Did you see that drive, that game-tying drive he had that concluded with the 17-yard touchdown pass, diving touchdown pass by Terrence Williams with less than 2 to go? That was ingenious. That was great right there on 4th down, nonetheless.
And he also has the benefit of working with a really, really good offensive line.
Great offensive line. He still has yet to win a single start as a Cowboy. Has not won in his last 12. Unbelievable.
And you can tell right now the Cowboy fans are just counting down the weeks until Tony Romo and Dez Bryant can return to the lineup.
That's without a doubt. The Bengals in the Queen City against the Chiefs, and yet Dalton throws a huge 55-yard touchdown pass on a scramble play to Brandon Tate. They end up beating the Chiefs 36-21. But Cairo Santos was the remarkable player in the day. He was a perfect 7-7 for field goals for the Chiefs.
Yep, the only source of offense. It just goes to show you how problematic that Chiefs offense is right now. They just cannot seem to be clicking.
And finally, the Bears get a victory at home against the Raiders, 22-20, and you got to give it up to Cutler. You may not like him, but he did engineer the game-winning drive that got them to the game-winning field goal by Robbie Gould, 49 yards.
And I told you we were going to see exactly how good of a team the Raiders are right now. Well, they just really self-destructed here. They let a game slip away.
Well, but you know what? Earlier in the game, I love that Carr touchdown pass he threw to Amari Cooper for 26 yards. Initially ruled out of bounds, and then it was ruled a fair catch. All right. The Colts' first game without Andrew Luck. Matt Hasselbeck, at the age of 40, leads his team to victory against the Jaguars. 16-13 overtime. Adam Vinatieri, the game-winning field goal from 27 yards, about 4:36 left. They tied an NFL record, 15th consecutive victory against their division foes.
Amazing.
And we'll talk about them in a bit later.
Yep.
The Panthers, of course, on the road in Tampa Bay, and Superman himself, Cam Newton, gets 2 touchdowns, and Josh Norton gets his second pick six, 4th overall interception of the year, 33-21. And the Houston Texans get destroyed and slammed by the Falcons in Atlanta, 48-21. Devonta Freeman, 3 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He's had 6 rushing TDs in the last 2 games.
That's like taking candy from a baby right there.
And then the Eagles of Philadelphia. I know, that's how they say it.
Eagles.
Yeah, in Philadelphia. They end up, they're coming off a big victory against the Jets. Unfortunately, I had to witness that.
Yeah.
But I was happy to be with my family. That's always a fun time. But anyway, they go to Washington trying to capitalize on their first win from week 3 against the Jets, and they can't. Especially when Kirk Cousins fumbles the ball in the beginning of the game at the 1-yard line, recovers it himself, and yet they still managed to win 23-20. They were piss poor in the first half, the Eagles. But the second half, they actually almost had a comeback. They had 3 second-half touchdowns, but it was just like too little, too late. The Giants rematch Super Bowl 25, beat the Buffalo Bills 24-10. Rashad Jennings breaks 3 tackles in the game for a 51-yard touchdown catch midway through the 4th.
Could this be the beginning of a little streak that the Giants have? They've already come up with 2 consecutive double-digit wins here. Let's see if they could go for a 3rd in a row.
And finally, from
jolly old England,
the Jets gave a jolly good beating to the Miami Dolphins, 27-14.
It was a good win for the Giants, but I still don't like what I'm seeing from Ryan Fitzpatrick. I certainly don't like the lack of discipline that the Jets showed in there, what with all of the penalties and the constant turning the ball over that Fitzpatrick made in that game.
Yeah, they had 14 penalties for 163 yards in this game, including a pair of pass interference calls that gave Miami 58 yards on back-to-back penalties.
This is where Todd Bowles really has to do his homework in how to make the Jets keep their composure. You cannot be committing 14 penalties in the game and expect to win every single time.
Chris Ivory, though, career day, 166 yards on the ground.
And it just goes to show you how great or how much better the Jets running game is than people give them credit for.
Okay, now that we talked about Week 4, let's get into Week 5. Starting last night, division rivalry in the AFC South we had. Oh, by the way, teams that are in the bye this week. Miami Dolphins, Renaissance hopefully coming. New York Jets, great 3-1 start, need to improve on those penalties. Vikings at 2-2. AP had a great day last week, had a 48-yard run. And finally, Superman and the Panthers at 4-0, but some teams say that's a product of their schedule.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens with the meat of their schedule. Now, last night, as I mentioned, AFC South, we had the Houston Texans visited by the Colts. And the Colts got their record 16th victory against their division. Unbelievable. They win 27-20. Andre Johnson goes back to his old team with 2 touchdowns, including a 2-yard reception in the 4th quarter. And, of course, Mike Adams got the game-ending interception off Brian Hoyer. Fortunately, Ryan Mallett was injured in the game.
Yeah, and as if they didn't have enough problems, now their quarterback winds up getting on the shelf.
And he even had an opening interception on the first drive of the game. Tipped, unfortunately, off Arian Foster into the hands of the Colts. Now, let's go into the one in the neighborhood game this week. We got the New York Giants being visited on Sunday night by the 49ers. 49ers last 2 weeks have only scored 10 points, 5 interceptions by Kaepernick. This is the week where they really need to get a big
You said it, man. I mean, this is where we see what the Giants do against another team that's, right now, they're better than. The 49ers have struggled mightily this season. They can't seem to get anything going on offense.
And their running game is terrible. They've gone from 230 to 111 to 103 and 77.
Wow. Do you think they miss Frank Gore?
Oh, without a doubt. Did you see the way he played last night for
Yeah.
Indianapolis? He still has some gas in those legs.
He definitely has a lot left in the tank right now.
So right there, the Giants are in a 3-way tie for first in the NFC East. Who would have thought them starting 0-2 would be in this situation right now at 2-2? It's unbelievable.
Yep.
I'm pulling for the Giants.
I think the Giants win as well because, quite frankly, they're so much better than the 49ers, but do not underestimate Colin Kaepernick. He is still a very good quarterback in that league, and we've seen him do so many amazing things. Don't be surprised if we see him shine here.
Now,
Extreme caution.
how about the first time Patriots visiting Jerry World to take on the Cowboys in a 425 tilt on Fox?
Yeah, this is the game where the Patriots